thankful for that. So, okay, so we're going to start.
And then real quickly, we'll talk about this again in a minute, but how many of you have been able to take the Enneagram test and know what your number is, at least what the test indicates?
Good.
Okay,
good.
We're going to ask
you don't have to know that. So don't. Okay.
Part of the way through, but we didn't get to finish it.
Okay.
We were partially through, but I didn't know it was going to be as long, so we
it's a long one.
missed our timing.
That's okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
For those of you that are going to do we're going to talk about a couple of things. So if you can grab a piece of paper for me, and we're just going to kind of do this fun little, this first one is not one that I'm super familiar with, but it's the one that's the shaped one. So it's the circle, the triangle, the square, the squiggle. So I need you to get a piece of paper, and we're going to do this, and then we'll just talk about this one.
Are you planning to talk to me about why we're doing this?
No.
How about I do that?
Crack myself up today. No. Yes. Go ahead, Carol.
And Tracy's laughing at you too.
Why would I need to explain anything?
Let's just jump in head first. We have just been talking quite a bit about the fact that I just saw a post today that said something about now that we know everybody around us way more than we ever did before.
Yes. And I guess I actually did put that on my personal page, my Facebook post. So in my brain, I was thinking I already said that.
These are just some tools that we can use to better interrelate with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Enneagram, I mean, every one of these that I've done have been so helpful to me. But the Enneagram stuff has been a game changer for me. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. But that's why we decided to go ahead and do this.
And like for us, I didn't, and I know just a little bit about the Enneagram, but Ashlyn's done a little bit more study. Carol's done a little bit more. And I love these options. So, okay. So this one is, it's called, the web where I got it, I just Googled personality test with shapes. And it took me to Owlcation. Don't know what that means, but it's a simple symbol personality test. So this is very basic. Carol actually told me the name of the lady that, I don't know, created this.
Connie, Connie Podesta, Podesta.
And I probably would have been more helpful if I'd gone there, but I didn't know that.
And
she
has all kinds
again,
of
let me
training.
say, it was BOGO day, so it was a little bit.
I had to have a drink.
Okay, a little bit. They're leaving me. It's me and Tara, guys. Me and the cow. Here we go. So, so have your piece of paper, and I'm going to give you, the shapes. You're going to draw each of these shapes once, but one of them you're going to do twice. It's your choice how big you draw them, how you draw them. If you make your own design, there's no right or wrong answer.
Oh, that's a fun way to do that one.
So we have a triangle, a square, a circle, and a squiggle.
Are they supposed to draw all of them? Or
yes, you're supposed to draw all of them.
Okay.
It says you're going to draw a design using each of these symbols one time, except one of those symbols of your choosing you utilize twice. Okay. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just what it is. So
who knew this was going to be arts and crafts?
I know. This is my extent of arts and crafts, guys. You do not want to be on my Pictionary team. I draw something and everyone goes, a cow, and I'm like, it's an airplane.
Hey, Miss Jean.
You don't even want to be on my team.
So just like no instruction, just draw those four things.
Draw them in the design. You're going to draw each of them. What? Each of them.
Just put them on the page.
One of them.
Put them on the page, whatever. And one of them you do twice. Okay.
Correct. Yes. Here, have it. Hang on. Let me get
here. One out
you got one? Okay. And then I'm going to show you if I might have left it at home though. I wrote it on.
What are they again? Triangle, square, squiggly, and circle.
Circle. Okay. Got them. So there's 4: square, triangle, circle, squiggle. Each of those once, one of those twice. Okay. And I should have brought mine. I didn't think about it. I should have brought mine that I did, but I did on a separate piece of paper because I was trying to just keep notes in my. Okay. So let me just. Okay. So here's the question. In that to kind of okay, so it says once you're finished, do not add other details. Is everybody finished? Okay, so it says now examine the picture or design that you drew. Are each of the 4 symbols drawn at least one time, and is there one of them drawn twice? Excellent. Okay, I'm going to assume we followed the directions. And this personality test is based on the theory that we tend to be attracted to certain shapes and forms based on our personality, attitudes, education, and our way our brain functions. The symbol you chose to draw twice is your dominant personality, okay? So you all can see, you all know then which one allegedly is your dominant. This was not the case for me, and I'll tell you why. But anyway, okay. So the triangle. We're gonna start. Anybody want to say about the triangle? Who was was anybody's that their dominant? Mom, you were dominant triangle. Carol's dominant triangle. Okay. And on Facebook, if you want to give us you can make those shapes with your emoji
or just say
whatever it is. Okay. Triangle. The triangle has symbolized leadership. Remember the ancient Egyptians, they buried their pharaohs, their leaders in pyramids, and the triangle is a shape hierarchy for the military, the government, the church, and organization, with the power concentrated at the top. So like for us, we talk, often we talk about, not the Trinity per se, we do, but anyway. So the four symbols, the triangle most closely represents leadership. Triangles are ambition and very interested in their careers. You are an overseer, an expediter, a leader, or a person of action. Your mantra is get it done. You want to make things happen now. You ask others when instead of how or why. Your watchword is now. You are decisive. You like to make decisions. You may be a fan of someone like Donald Trump or General George S. Patton or former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Your favorite game, what else? Follow the leader. And I'm assuming then you're the leader. Your positive traits, leadership, decisiveness, ambitious, focused, self-motivated, potential pitfalls, impatience, aggressiveness, self-centeredness. Okay. So again, that may or may not fit you, and that's okay, because these are just, things. So the square.
There's something to say when you're done with
okay. The square most emphasizes an organization and structure. You are an organizer. You may be, oh, sorry, I forgot to ask. Any squares? Who we have that was a square? Was that their dominant? Anybody a square? Give me a hand if you have a thumb. Okay, no squares. Okay, we'll continue. Your mantra is get it right, even if it takes all night. Your watchword is how. You believe in status quo and work ethic. You want everything in the right place at the right time. You may be a fan of someone like Bill Gates, except maybe right now. Anyway, I digress.
Yes, you did.
Let's see, your positive traits: organized, knowledgeable, analytical, patient, persevering, and generally a neat person. Pitfalls: possible procrastinator, perfectionist, aloof, resistant to change, and meticulous. Okay.
One of the things they told us when we did this test with Connie Podesta was somebody who presented, must have been, how many years have you gone to leadership?
I have no idea. 4.
It was probably 5 years ago at leadership. One of the things that they pointed out is with both the triangle and the square, we have pointy corners and we have a tendency to bump into others with our pointy corners.
Wow. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Okay. The circle. Whose circles we have? Circles. Okay. Okay. Really, Kara?
Really, Kara?
That surprises me. Okay. Circles. Okay. So a circle is.
I never dreamed it myself. What it was, I had everything drawn in a perfect square.
Yeah.
And then I went, oh shoot, I forgot to do one twice. So I drew a big circle around the outside.
All right.
Maybe I'm a little mixed up.
I think she encompasses all of them.
That's true. Could be. But I think there is some validity to that as well.
And this will make sense when Sammy starts reading it.
The circle is the most kind and caring. Your focus is to smooth the waters and keep the peace. You are the glue that holds the family or the work team together. That sensitive person who really cares about feelings. You are an optimist. Your mantra is, can't we all just get along? Your watchword is who.
What are you?
Well, here's the thing. I actually ended up drawing the squiggle twice, but ultimately I am a circle.
Yes, you are.
I am a circle. But I thought the squiggle was fun.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I thought, oh, I should probably, but if I really was thinking about it, I would have drawn a big circle around everything. But then I was like, oh, and I was reading the
I'm
directions.
so sorry. What is my word? My husband called and I totally missed that. So sorry.
What is your what?
Her word.
The word.
The circle? Oh, word. Watchword is who. Who will be on the team is what it says. So you express kindness, caring, and concern. You're an excellent communicator because you are an effective listener and know how to establish empathy quickly. You may, a hero, someone like Florence Nightingale, Albert Schweitzer, or Mother Teresa. Your positive traits: friendly, persuasive, empathetic, generous, reflective, potential pitfalls: indecisive, moody, manipulative, and you may also have a tendency to get too personal. Okay, so that was the circle. And then we have the squiggle. Okay, any squiggles? Squiggles, Beth?
That doesn't surprise me.
Okay, a squiggle. A squiggle is the most unique and the most creative. Your mantra is get it done differently. Your watchword is why. Why do we have to do it that way? What are our alternatives? You continually ask what if. You are a future-oriented person. You're creative, imaginative, free form, and you like to have fun and think out of the box. So see, when I wrote the squiggle twice and then I started reading this and I went, no,
Yeah,
this is
because
not
the
me.
squiggles tend to be the life of the party.
See, I wrote the squiggle twice because it completed my picture.
Well, could be. Okay.
You're a squiggle.
Very creative. That's the creative part, right?
What?
That was the creative part.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
picture.
So it says movies that you may want to see again are Avatar and animated films like Despicable Me and the Shrek series. That's funny. Isn't that funny? Let's see.
I was totally watching Despicable Me last night.
That's funny. Your positive traits: conceptual, creative, intuitive, expressive, motivating, witty, and inventive. And potential pitfalls are disorganized, impractical, unrealistic, illogical, eccentric, naive, and uninhibited.
Maybe I could be a squiggle circle.
I know that's what I'm thinking. Like I'm thinking maybe my circle has like this around it, like that's how you draw this circle. Yeah. I don't know. Because I'm really not a squiggle, but yeah, that's what I do.
Because I'm kind of a combo of a triangle and a square, although Connie Podesta would tell you you are one thing.
Yeah. And again, like I said, I'm sure there's way more to this than this.
And Tracy, what are you?
Circle and a square. I'm a square with rounded corners.
Yeah, Terry, yeah. Yes.
You're not a square.
Tracy, can you give me
Make
this?
up your mind.
Supposedly I'm a triangle.
You're okay. Yeah, I could. Yeah. So I just think again, all of these things, and like.
Did Fran say what she was? Fran, what are you? Triangle. Okay.
Triangle. Okay. So that was just kind of, again, that's just kind of a fun little, thing. And, there's lots of these things. There's the DISC assessment. I don't know if those of you have done the DISC. Your mom's a circle.
Yes.
And Linda Ellison says me, but I don't know what me is. So Linda, you'll have to give us a little more information.
Yeah. Which one are you?
But like the DISC assessment. So sorry. DISC assessment.
Your mama's on here.
Whoops. And in those, that's cracking up. Those stand for. There we go. So sorry, guys. And anywho, those of you that know.
Slow down. Slow down. We're not in a hurry.
Yeah. So the DISC assessment, those stand for dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance. And I think just with those words, you can kind of find kind of what resonates with you. And when I pulled it up, when I Googled it earlier, it gave a circle that said DISC, and then it had all of these kind of traits in each part of that.
It will surprise no one to know that I'm a high C.
Yeah. Compliance. Yeah.
So are you saying that if you're a circle, those things you just said apply?
Sorry. This is another test option. That kind of we've heard of. Then you have the what's the one called with all the letters? We were just talking about this yesterday with our youngest son and daughter-in-law. The INFP and all of those.
Myers-Briggs.
Thank you, Myers-Briggs.
Yes.
And it's just, and I think the thing with all of these is you learn a lot about yourself, but it also helps you to understand maybe other people a little bit better and why maybe they walk to the beat that they do.
Miss Jean, isn't Paul a facilitator for the Myers-Briggs test?
Oh.
So if anybody's interested, and I'm waiting to hear back from her, but if anybody's interested in taking that test, that's another one that is very much like the Enneagram test that we did today, and that it's a very, very long test. But it's talk about reading your diary.
Yeah. So again, and those of you that have been around for a long time, remember years ago, there was the whole thing with the type of the golden retriever, the otter. Those are the only two I can ever remember. I don't remember the other animals, but there were like 4 of them, and it was like
the lion and the bear.
Which one you were? The lion was one of them. Yes, Terry.
Nothing about the animals, but the Myers-Briggs. And I took it like 20 years ago. Do you think that you would change?
You can.
That I would say so, and here's why I say that, because I was just getting ready to just touch briefly on the Strengths Finders, which those of you that are part of doTERRA know that we took that a few years ago at Leadership, and I honestly want to take it again because when I answered the questions, I answered kind of, I don't even know how to explain it, but the more that I think about it, I really have grown. And I think I actually answering some of those questions honestly would be a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I'm interested. Again, I know that overall, like those of you that are familiar with the strengths, there's 34 strengths. You take a test, and when we at Leadership, I've only taken the basic test, which gives you your top 5. But you can go through all 34 tests, or all 34 of those traits, and then you'll also see where your low ones are and what those are. And that's always interesting too, because it again shows you where your weakness is. Now, the thing with the Strengths Finder that I thought was so interesting is how many of you have heard or been involved in trainings, or even a boss that might have said to you, these are your weaknesses and you need to focus on making those stronger, right? We've all heard that. Well, the bottom line is a lot of that, and they gave us the percentage, and it was so very interesting to see that in a true weakness, you can actually only improve that by a very minimal amount, truly. And so I thought,
the best part about knowing your weaknesses is knowing where you need to find help. Like if you're in a work environment, then if you're weak in your bottom 5 or your bottom 10, you need to look for coworkers who are strong in those areas so that you have a well-balanced group and team. The same is true on your
doTERRA. Sorry
team.
for our friends over here, because I feel like we're not looking at them.
I'm trying to.
You are. Okay, well, I'm not, because I'm over here. But anyway, yeah. So I just think it's interesting.
Do you have your top?
It's
top
on
five?
my screen on my phone. Like I have a screenshot. But
I'm
my
sure I have
two
it.
top ones are empathy and harmony. And any of you that know me know that's not a big surprise.
You also have-
I had belief. I had responsibility. Maybe
that probably.
and I cannot remember my 5th one. But again, I know that those are true. My guess is if I were to take the full test, it would probably explain more about some of that. But I just think it's so interesting. But the whole thing was we actually need to function and be aware of our strengths and function out of that, because obviously that's kind of our best. But again, knowing weakness helps as well.
And can I jump in?
Yeah.
Okay, for those of you who have done the Strengths Finder at all, I'll just give you my top 5, and I'm going to read off for you what, like my number 1, what it tells us about someone. So my top 5 are relator, responsibility, developer, belief, and deliberative. And so that I have a book. This is an incredible book if you guys are building a team with doTERRA or anywhere, because we all have teams that we're working with, even if it's just a family. So it's called Strengths-Based Leadership by Don Clifton. He's the developer of the strengths stuff. And it says, leading with relator. People who are strong in the relator theme enjoy close relationships with others. They find deep satisfaction in working hard with friends to achieve a goal. Yeah. They build trust. Important relationships generate confidences. Maintain and build on the trust you have by keeping the confidences with which you were entrusted. One breach empties a dam. You know that the deepening of a friendship carries inherent risk, but you're more comfortable than most in accepting that fact. Say so. Acknowledge it aloud and tell the other person that the depth of the relationship has created trust on your part and makes you feel safe with disclosure. It gives you ideas on how to show compassion, because as a relator, that's not a strong suit.
I think that's super interesting, though, that it's not.
Yeah.
Because you would think it would be.
As a relator, you require a lot of time with somebody to build and when you put I'm doing a training on Friday. Oh, Friday. I'm signed up to do a training on Friday that is a training that tells how to combine the strengths information with Enneagram information. And I'm just so excited to do that because I can already see where it would fall together.
But see how even in this discussion where she reads that, and I'm like, well, to me, realtor seems like you would have to have compassion, you would be high.
Yeah.
But that's my harmony and empathy, I would assume, speaking. But so I just think it's so interesting.
Yeah.
And
like,
again,
for example, it says that a relator is a giver, not a taker. But for your generosity to continue, you must ensure that the inflow keeps up with the rapid outflow. So
interesting.
We need to be fed into at the same time that we're giving. So just all kinds of information. and interesting stuff here. doTERRA has a spot on the website in the Empowered Success section that gives a lot more information about this strengths finder.
And I think they even, at least at one point in time, had, when you knew what your strength was, you actually could go in and it would tell you how
There's
to
all kinds of
function in
training.
your business
Yeah.
out of that strength. So again, incredible. Function out of that, not trying to be somebody else or improve on your weaknesses, that kind of thing, but going in that. And not to say that there's not room for growth, because I don't mean that at all. And there are times that we all have to step out of our comfort zone. And I think that's something to do maybe in an incident by incident, but again, not that you to function out of that all the time is hard, and that's not really who you're called to be. So, and then before we talk about the Enneagram a little bit more, I'm going to talk about the 5 love languages. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but this is the book. Gary Chapman is the author. This is an older book. This has been around for a long time. But I remember when I first discovered this, it literally felt life-changing for me, because I finally understood why things might hurt me so much, or why things were so important to me, was because of this. So the 5 love languages are words of affirmation, gifts, quality time, acts of service, and physical touch. So those are the 5, and probably just even reading that off, there are some that jump out to you as far as not really my thing, or you really are like, oh yeah, that's so me. And so when I was able to start this, and when I very first did this, I really thought that physical touch was my main love language, and it is high, but it's actually not my highest. My highest is words of affirmation, which also explains why things that are said cut you deeper.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some other people, things can kind of roll off their back, but for other people, it doesn't. And so this was
I think
just,
that's also why we get along so well, in large part because so's mine.
yeah. And again, and you do tend to love people the way that you want to be loved. So like, I'm very, at least I try to be very careful with my words, because I know how much it hurts me, and I wouldn't want to hurt somebody else.
Peggy said hers is gifts. That doesn't
Gifts,
surprise me.
yeah. And so, and it's interesting, but here's the downside of that comes that you tend to love people the way you want to be loved. The downside comes when that's not their love language. So not that you might not appreciate it, but it just doesn't necessarily get you right where you are, maybe, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Carrie, do you want to say something? Were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was just agreeing. Sorry.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. So I again, these are just the tools to kind of learn. And then this too was a game changer for me when I put it in perspective with my kids, especially when they were growing up. There is a love language for children. I didn't necessarily read that. I just tried to implement this with my kids. And I have one of my children who is a physical touch all the way. I mean, since the time that he was born, he has to touch you. He has to hug you. He would hug the other boys on the basketball team. He is a hugger to the nth degree. And we just had to laugh at that sometimes, because you're just like, oh my goodness, it was just so funny. But that is just, that's just him. And funny story, you'll get a kick out of this, that when he was little, my husband was traveling for a while on business, and the kids would take turns sleeping with me. And he was one that if he's sleeping with you, he had to be touching you some way, shape, or form. And so finally, I got to where I put the mound of pillows between us. And I'm like, son, do not cross the pillows. And he looked at me one day with all sincerity and sadness, and he says, do you say that to dad? And I'm like, perhaps sometimes I do. Don't cross the pillows. But that is his love language. And now, Ashland's is words of affirmation. Caleb's actually a little bit trickier. And Doug, my husband, it took me a while, because he's kind of a little bit of each, but now his is words of affirmation as well. So,
Linda Ellison is asking on Facebook, how do you find out what your love language is?
There's this handy book. I'm going to assume now that there's like a website
Show it over there.
that you can go to. Sorry, guys. So it's the 5 love languages. Gary Smalley is the author, and he's been around for a long time. Like, I remember as a kid and an early teen listening to him on Focus on the Family, Dr. Dobson, for those of you that are familiar. And that's when I first kind of started to be familiar with him and his stuff. So, but just again.
They've rewritten the book, actually.
The what?
there's a newer version of it.
Yeah.
And so there's actually a test in the book, if I remember, because they gave it to Marty and I before we got married in our counseling.
Yeah. So again, it just kind of it gives it, but I'm going to tell you, and it's on my phone, so I'm going to have to do it from memory. But I stumbled upon this a while ago, and it was Chick-fil-A, and y'all know I love Chick-fil-A, obviously. My husband works there. And it was Chick-fil-A according to love languages, okay? So now I have to go through them. So it's for gifts, it's here is some Chick-fil-A, okay? I'm giving you the gift, I'm bringing it to you. I have to think. Words of I know, but now I'm trying to think of what it is. Words of affirmation, it was
Probably just it's my
just,
pleasure.
this is my, this is visit, yeah. But now I'm trying to remember. I wish I could read it, but it's on my phone, and my phone's over there. But like physical touch was, it's the Lord's chicken on my lip.
I got it. Do you want me to read it?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I
please.
have it.
Yes, please do.
Acts of service. Would you like me to pick up some Chick-fil-A? Quality time. Would you like to go to Chick-fil-A with me?
Okay.
No. Words of affirmation. Thank you for this Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
Gifts. I got you, Chick-fil-A. Physical touch. The Lord's chicken is on your lip.
So see how that, and what happens if you fall into all of those things? It just means you love Chick-fil-A. That's just what it is. So
Feed me. That's what that means.
but that's what's so funny is how it just again puts all of that in perspective. And that's a silly thing as far as I've seen the same thing with coffee. And it's the same thing about let me bring you some coffee, let me, okay, here's and Ashlyn's not with us.
Yes.
And so that's again just perspective. But I think again the key is to remember, and I'll move this too so you can scooch in better. Is it helps us to love others better and to relate with others better. And I think, like Carol said, in this time frame where we've all been together a lot, and maybe a lot more than we have been in just some of those areas, and even as far as like again for our family, and then even Beth is my sister. For those of you that don't know, she works for Walmart. My husband works for Chick-fil-A. So again, they're considered essential employees. They're gone. Well, let me tell you, the stress level on the ones that are gone and out is just as high as those that are home not being able to do what they want to do or feel that they need to do. It's just different. So even incorporating these things into that is super helpful, because the bottom line is, as a family and those that you love, you want to do that to the best of your ability. And it's the same thing in our businesses. For those of you that have a doTERRA team, or just you're on our team Holtz, we are a family and a community, and being able to relate to each other and understand helps. Instead of just maybe getting your feelings hurt or getting irritated with somebody, it's like, okay, hang on a second. Their love language is this, or they're high on the DISC assessment in this, or their strength is empathy. That's why she's always being, can't we all just get along? It's that whole thing, and understanding that just really helps immensely. So those were just a few of the other ones. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the Enneagram. And again, like I said, I don't know nearly as much. I know what my number is. I know what her number is and her number is. But other than that, I don't know a whole lot. So I'm going to scooch back with Tara the cow here as close as I can. And they're going to talk a little bit more about those. But those of you, how many of you were able to take the test or know your number already? On Zoom, if you can raise your hand so we can kind of see those that know their number.
5.
She's a 1. Oh, she was just raising her
Oh,
hand.
okay. A 1.
What do you want me to?
Okay.
The gallery view. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And
Carrie, what are you? Do you know?
Okay, you're asking me for the Enneagram, what am I?
Yes.
I have not done it, so I
Okay.
have no idea.
Okay. All right. Judy, do you know what you are? Do you know what you are?
Yes. I'm a high 2 and a high 9.
Okay.
Those are my 2 highs,
Okay.
Okay.
We'll go through.
separated by 6 points.
Okay. Okay. We're just
And I'm in
discussing the Facebook
process.
Live, trying to see if we could turn the screen to be better. Sorry, but Ashlyn said we can't because we're already in. Hang on a second.
Sorry, everyone's getting up close and personal view.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm in process of that test, but it was longer than I thought, so I didn't get
Yeah,
it.
that's okay. That's okay.
Beth, do you know what you are?
Ashlyn, do you remember what I did when I took it a while ago? Was I a 9 and a 1 or something?
I think
You're probably a 9 now that
I think that's, I remember a 9 being in there somewhere.
just as like a thing, just brief. 9s often type for all types because they're the peacemakers and they want everyone to get along in a sense. So they kind of like adapt to each type. So I think you're probably a 9 because that's what Caleb is.
I think that's correct.
What's so interesting is when you start learning this too, because we took these tests and Caleb had taken the test and had come up with his number. And then we were listening to some podcasts along. And when he got to this one, he said he was driving, he literally started crying because he was like, this is my 6-foot son. And he said, because it's so,
7 foot.
what did I say? 6 foot, 7 foot. Man, I'm having trouble with words tonight. 7-foot son and he said it just because it was speaking, directly to him. So I just think that's interesting. And so that, in our family, we have our direct, so the 5 of my 2 daughter-in-laws, and then Carol. We have 3 2s, 1 3, 1 4, 1 5, 1 6, and 1 9. So that's what in our family makeup. So it's so interesting.
Becca Golden also said that she's a 6.
Okay. So, all right. Good to know. Okay. Go ahead, ladies.
And Peggy's on here. She's a 5. We know she's a 5.
Maybe they don't want you to out their number.
Well, everybody else is. So
if us 5 stick together.
Oh,
Peggy
absolutely.
has said that before.
Okay.
So
absolutely.
5
And let me just
till the end.
we were doing this on Saturday, and I have kind of kept a list as I've learned what different people's numbers are. So just to give you kind of an idea for those of you who know some of the other people on our team or people surrounding our team, Mary Carlisle's a 6. Carrie Griffin in our upline is a 2. Louisa Crane is a 7. Heather Wagner's a 1. Tamara Allingham, if you've paid attention or if you know the gal that's the invisible upline, is a 4. You wouldn't know them. Christy Hughes is a 1. Jennifer Brady, you've heard us talk about Jennifer Brady. She's an 8. And that's what I got.
And that just kind of gives you some of that too. Now, again, some of it is a difference in personality. So that plays into it as well. But okay, go ahead, girls.
So do you want to talk about what each of the numbers, just kind of a brief overview of what each of the numbers does? What?
I need my phone.
Okay, that's okay. She pulled up Facebook on hers, but she's got to get back because her notes are on her phone. So
Ashlyn, your hair looks lovely today.
Doesn't it?
Thank you.
And just so you know, different people who teach on the Enneagram kind of have different names or titles for words that they use with each number, but they all kind of tie together. And Beth, I was going to say this too. One of the things that I found when I discovered for sure what my number was, because I tested equally high with 2 numbers and then just one total number down on a 3rd. I looked, once I got a listing of what the negative aspects of the number was, that's where I could tell who I was.
and again, remember there are downsides. It's all strength and weaknesses.
Yeah.
It's
Every type has
just
good and bad.
But saying what she did about the negative sides, that's actually, I just did, is that me?
no. I think we bumped the table.
I just did I did a thing on Saturday that was like it was a Zoom call thing. I'm sorry, Zoom card. She said webinar. And there were a couple people on there who didn't know their number, they had taken the test, but they weren't sure. And so the lady had us like go from our, like the deepest fear or like the negative side of you. And that sounds so horrible because you're like, why would I want to figure out who I am by the negatives?
Yeah.
But it is an aspect because whether you want to think it or not, I'm trying to figure out a way. I don't want to say like, but everybody has bad sides to them. I mean, everybody has.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, and even if you think that, maybe you're
Close to perfect.
well, or that you don't stink or your poop doesn't stink, it does.
Yeah, everybody.
So I'm just saying, like, there's a point of. I mean, I am on here, so I do apologize. I don't cuss. I don't say any bad words, but I might say poop. It's fine. So, so there's a point of being real, and I think that's why I like the Enneagram so much because it's not just about like this is all the positives about you, and this is all the flowers and rainbows, and let's just everybody love each other and whatever. That's great, and you should love yourself. But there's a point of like coming to grips with the fact that we all have negative sides, and we all have things we can work on, and that's why I like the fact of if you're not sure of your number, that you can then go by the negative side of it, because
Well, and isn't it
or the
refers
weak
to
side,
like
I
a
should say.
weakness or even but that's, I guess it's different than what stress brings out even then too, right?
Yeah, and that's what I learned too, that the stress and I don't know what the other word was, but are a little bit different.
Okay.
So
Okay.
but I was trying to find the were you asking about what number was labeled?
You want her to give
Those
just
you're
those
saying?
words
Yeah.
right now? Do that?
Oh, that you're doing that one, not the actual name, like the investigator type things.
Well, like I said, I was just using the word to describe each one, and then we were going to go through the different numbers and tell what the descriptive word, the
Okay,
title
because
of.
those are different then.
Yeah.
Like those are a different type
Okay.
of.
So go ahead and do those, Carol. and
Okay.
then we'll go
So these are just words that are just a short descriptor of each number. Number 1 is goodness. Number 2 is love. Number 3 is effective. I'm sorry, I'm going too fast.
Write really fast, guys. Write effective really fast. It's a really long word. Write it fast.
Did you get all those? 1 is goodness. 2 is love. 3 is effective. 4 is creative. 5 is wisdom. 6 is loyalty. Is it different?
Yeah. Some of them are no. I was.
Yeah. Like I
gonna
said,
add
different
in. Right,
trainers
no,
do.
when you said
7 is joy. 8 is power. And 9 is peace.
So now that she's just said that, the one that I did on Saturday, I don't know. I know yours was with a different conference, and I know the lady is a believer.
Yeah.
And she has a relationship with the Lord. But the lady that I did, like she does, and
Did you do one with Beth and Jeff?
okay, no. And she was actually starting it out with, if you're familiar with the Bible, the fruit of the Spirit.
Oh, good.
And so that was actually the only one that was different was for a 6, and this is faithfulness and courage, because faithfulness is one of the fruits of the Spirit.
Or faithfulness and loyalty.
Yeah.
You can see
But
those similar.
and so, but when she was reading those off, I thought of all of the weaknesses of each number and how each of those words she listed is also one of the biggest downfalls.
Yes.
Because goodness, for one, goodness is they always want to be, they're the perfectionists. They always want to be good, and they always want to be seen as good, and they want to, and then if they're not, they get like kind of mad.
Yeah.
And
Well, in their mind, another way to say that is that in their minds, they're always right.
yeah, so, and then a 2 is they love, and they're big lovers, and they love well, but their downfall is that's what often drives them. And they love from their need to be loved, and instead of it always being good, it can get them into a trap of, well, I'm not being loved enough, and then kind of going into that downward spiral of, well, I'm not being loved enough,
Right.
and working for that love. And then what did you say 3 was?
3 is
Effective. So a 3, their driving force is to achieve a lot. Another word that they use is the achiever. And it's all about what can I do, and what can I accomplish, and what can I do.
So what fruit of the Spirit? What did they say for that?
Oh, sorry.
I would be, because that some of them obviously make sense. I was just trying to figure
3 was hope and radiance.
Okay, interesting.
But in the sense of like radiance, you think of something as like the sun is radiating, or you're radiate, like of beauty. But there's also a point of like wanting to be seen. Like 3s, there are two people in my life that are really close to me that are both 3s, and they're very driven off of what people think of them. And the fact that someone would think poorly of them is just like, that's crushing to them. And so, but that drives them a lot too. And so there's a point of like the people pleaser aspect. And then 4,
Michelle.
Ashlyn, before you go to 4,
yes.
number 3, because we want to clarify,
Huh?
is it respective or effective for number 3?
Effective.
Effective.
Effective, yes.
Michelle Ray says on Facebook, she says, wow, you explained me as a 2 spot on.
Well, little known fact, my mom's a 2 and I live with her and we're really close, so I know 2s really well.
And again, when I first took the test, I thought I was 6. That's what I thought. And I thought that for quite a while. And then I took, we talked it through and looked at some things, and it was like, oh, I really am doing. And even for Carol and I, we were talking about it just the other day, and she was saying, as a 6, this is why she feels this way. And I'm like, and I feel this way as a 2, even though I have the gift of mercy, spiritual gift wise. And so again, it's interesting to see how all of that.
Well, and yeah, and my personality and her personality are different. And, you know, for me, my biggest draw to the Enneagram was it after I learned so much about myself, I realized, well, it's not just about me. There's not just information out there that's about me. There's other people. And when I see that, and I even on Saturday saw some different sides of a 2, because a lady that was on there as a 2, and she's a little bit more probably harsh or rough than my mom. And so she was a little bit more outspoken about like her weak side, I guess. And I was like, and it gave me a different perspective, because I realized, oh, that is kind of how my mom is, but I just wouldn't have seen it that way. And so there's just like differences in like that's for me. I just like this because it teaches me more about other people and how to love them better and how to, you know, kind of put my selfish desires to the side and
Well,
help
and
them be
again,
better.
in this journey, learning about Ashlyn, because she said she's a 5, it made so much sense to me, because I would get my feelings hurt all the time. Like, I could not understand why when we went to get Mexican food and Target is right across the parking lot, she did not want to go to Target. Like, I did not understand. What do you mean you don't want to go to Target?
I mean, right now I'd be game for it.
Or I'm like, Maurice's is just that way across the parking lot, and Dollar Tree's way down there. I mean, and it would hurt my feelings. So I'm like, I don't understand why she just doesn't want to run to the store. Like, you know, and so that helped me to understand. And so, like, I don't necessarily suggest it, you know, without a warning. And there's reasoning behind that. But then, like, when she
If
discusses
we're all 3 together in 2 separate cars, Ashlyn goes home and Amy and I go to
and we're
Target.
going to somewhere. Yeah, somewhere else.
So Ashlyn, what's your number?
What?
What's your number?
5. And
And
so,
we'll explain what that,
yeah.
break it down a little bit
But
more.
just to like, because we're on this topic right now, a 5, actually, they say a 5 like wakes up at 50%. So after we've slept all night, we've had a good night's sleep. Yes, Beth. We've had a good night's sleep. We should be good to go, like, for the whole day. But we can do one thing that takes energy from us, and that's all we can do. Unless we have prepared the night before, okay, so tomorrow we're going to go eat lunch at Mexican, then we're going to go to Target, and then we're going to go to Maurice's, and then we're going to go to Ross. Ross is really pushing it for me because it's just not as organized as I like, but I can't just go to like Shark Racks, but it's fine. You know, and then it's like, because there are some days that Mom and I can go down to one of our little towns about 20 minutes south of us, and I can be good to walk around and see the store or go into stores and all that. And then other days I'm like, I just want to go eat and then I want to come home, you know? And so it's like, it's just that, like they say that 5s just, instead of being 100% charged, we charge 250%. Like that's
Well, and
it.
that made a big, like, that was a powerful word picture to me, because obviously my mom said when I was little, we would go to Disneyland, spend the entire day at Disneyland. We would come home for dinner, and I would eat dinner, and then I would say, now what are we going to do? Now where are we going to go? What are we
She still
gonna
does that.
And so I'm like, Well, I just thought that was normal, so all that to say, if she tells me the night before that this is the plan, I won't be able to sleep because I will be too excited about all that I'm doing the next day.
There's a plan.
There's a plan, and we're going all the places.
Well, and I want to show you really quickly because we're talking about this, and I'm afraid that I'll forget to mention it later. There's a couple of artists that, not artists, writers,
Authors.
about the Enneagram that we've learned to really appreciate. There's this one book that I have is by Suzanne Stabile. It's Stabile. She's written a couple of books. One of them is called The Road Back to You. And then there's this one that I've used is called The Path Between Us. And what this book does is it's an Enneagram's journey to healthy relationships. And it goes through and shows like how a 1 and a 5 interact and relate, and how best to communicate with someone, that type of thing.
Which makes a huge difference,
Yeah.
again, whether it's a family relationship, a work relationship, whatever, helping each
Well,
other.
I think that those books are actually good because, like, for me, my focus is more, I want to better myself, because I know that if I don't better myself, I can't really work on my relationships. Where some people, if you have like a business, which I have a business, but not to the extent of Carol's or my mom's, and so I don't necessarily, my drive is not necessarily for my relationships, because quite honestly, I'm not perfect at my relationships, but I love my people well. And so for me, I knew that if I did the research on each number, that I don't necessarily need to read that one first.
Right.
I would need to read, and I haven't read it because I'm not a reader much. I read a lot, but not like books. But the other one that's about me bettering myself, so that but even at that, I could read for each number. So it's just, I think it's really what your main focus probably needs to be.
There's another couple that I have learned to follow or really enjoyed following. I don't know who Ashlyn has followed the most, but if you follow social media, they have an account on Facebook and Instagram. It's Your Enneagram Coach. And it's Jeff and Beth McCord, McCord. Both of these authors come from a faith base. So they've got some great interaction when it comes to that.
I think the one I follow the closest, I believe, is Enneagram and Coffee. Yes. Enneagram and Coffee is the main one. Just because there's a spiritual, a biblical aspect to it as well. It's just a little bit more like she's the one that I really like a lot. But obviously the one I hear about the most is Your Enneagram Coach, because that's like the bigger one.
They've done some great things. They have several books, but they've done a whole couple of series. One of them is a series, each number has its own book, and it's a workbook so you can learn more about your number and who you are and how you interact with people and why you are. They've also got specific books that, like, Amy's a 2 and Doug's a 3. And so they can buy, there's a book that they can buy written by these authors that tells how best couples that are a 2 and a 3 can relate to each other. So just some great resources out there.
Okay, so I want to finish these. So 4 is creative. So obviously 4s have more of the creative side to them, and they're a little bit easier to like think of the creative stuff. But the negative side of that is that they want to be unique, and they want to, in a sense, be the creator, not the createe. The created. There you go. I was like, wait, that's not right. The created. They want to be the creator, and they want to be. Their main drive is to be unique. Like the lady that I did the Zoom call with, her daughter is a 4, and her daughter had a feather tattoo on like her chest, kind of like right near her collarbone, and another person who we all actually knew because it's a famous person, she was friends with her, got the same tattoo. And so the girl whose tattoo it was first went and got it extended because she didn't want it to be the same as her. And so there's a point of like, that's not me. I'm like, okay, sure, it was a great idea. You're welcome. Like, that's kind of my thing.
I'm done.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't need to extend it. But, you know, so that's the thing with the 4. The thing with the 4 is they want to be the only one. And they will admit that. Like, they'll say, well, I want to be unique. And so there's a point of like, the creative side is good, but then the creative side becomes self-focused and they want to be the only one that's creative, you know. So then a 5, which is me. This is always awkward because I feel like I'm like, hello everyone. But a 5 is, this on here is wisdom. So 5s are investigators. They find all of the information. They most of the time have all the facts. So like right now during this pandemic, if you ask them, how long is this going to last? What's the latest update? They can probably tell you, because I could probably tell you. And so at least for where I live, not for all 50 states, but at least for where I live, I'm going to know. And that makes me feel like I have control. But that's also the negative side of it, because if I don't have the wisdom, if I don't have the knowledge, if I don't have the answers, I feel like I'm out of control and I don't have the control. So there's the negative aspect of that is we're driven to have wisdom in times where we just don't have it. You know, at the beginning of this whole pandemic, there was not information because it's new, brand new. There's no,
So
well, this will treat it, or this will make it stop, or this will whatever. There was none of that.
So whereas some of us are just now panicking because it's been so long.
Yeah.
5s panicked.
Oh, we panicked at the beginning.
We didn't have information.
It was at the very beginning, and it was, hang on a second, you're telling me what? There's something new going on,
and nobody knows
and
what
you're
it is.
telling me we don't know when it's going to stop? You've got to be kidding me. Like, there's that point, so you panic. That's laughing at me. I'm laughing. But there's a point of, as good as it is to have that knowledge and to be able to give that to other people, when we don't have it, we're relying on ourselves for that wisdom and for that control. So then 6 is loyalty. So they are known as the loyalist.
The puppies.
So, and they're great. They're loyal to their people. They're loyal to a task, to an assignment. But in other words, they can be that there's a negative side to that too, because you can be so loyal to a person who is constantly smacking you, but you're loyal. So if you leave, I'm supposed to be loyal. I'm supposed to be, I can't leave them because, and you literally are getting drugged through the mud constantly because you're loyal and because you don't have the ability to say, yes, I'm loyal, but I'm worth not getting drugged through the mud. And in a sense, bettering yourself to figure out why you're getting drugged through the mud, because sometimes it's just, you're trying too hard, but it's just that loyal aspect can also be dangerous to where it can be positive, because there's pros and cons to the loyalty. 7 is joy. 7s are very intense in their joy. They're very, when they're in a good place, they're like the life of the party.
Mm-hmm. Is anybody right here, is anybody a 7 that they want to tell? You don't have to if you don't want to.
Nobody mentioned.
Okay, nobody mentioned a 7. Okay.
They're, just the life of the party, and they, hang on while I'm saying that, I was going to find the, but they're intense in a good way. As you can imagine, the opposite of intense in a good way is intense in a bad way. So it's like one of the unhealthy sides, or some of the unhealthy sides of a 7 is they become self-focused, they become manic, because they're so, hey everybody, like out there, whatever. When they're not that, they're still that way, but it goes into a negative place, if that makes sense. They're restless, impulsive, rebellious, and scattered. And so
7s are the ones most likely not to finish something.
yeah, and so they're just full of energy, and that can be both sides. And so then an 8 is power. The 8 is known as the challenger. And probably all of you thought of someone you go, oh yes, they're a challenger. Because everybody has somebody that goes, whoop, that's them.
Not even know that for sure. Yeah, number.
Well, you think, okay, you may not know they're an 8, but you may think, oh, I know a challenger.
Let me say, hey, Rachel. Hey, Mary. Hey, Jamie. Glad you're here.
Oh, hello. Sorry. So then an 8 is the challenger, which is good because we need people in our lives to challenge us so we can then grow. And we need people to, that challenging aspect of like, well, okay, so I know that was bad or that was hard or that was sad, but like, let's see maybe why this or why it was this way. Or so they kind of challenge your views in a sense and like maybe your opinions and kind of gets you thinking. But again, there's the negative side. And so when they constantly have a better opinion, or so they think, and they have a stronger opinion and they're louder and they're adamant that they are right. And it does not matter if they hurt your feelings. Like an example somebody gave was,
it's Jamie because the rebellious child.
But she said that because of 5, there's a whole different aspect, and that's just would take too much time. So we won't do every number, but each number goes to a number when they're in like a good state, and a number when they go into like when they're stressed or kind of in an unhealthy place in life. And a 5 goes to an 8 when they're healthy, but that's the healthy aspects of an 8 and the good aspects of an 8. And so like for me, when I'm in a good place, I can be very outgoing and I can be very extroverted and I can be like challenging, but in a good way. And like, okay, well, I know that might have hurt your feelings, but like, I don't want you to stay there because I don't think that's all there is to the story. Because so my 5 and my 8 come into play because I think about it and I think, well, there has to be more to it, but let's not stay there because I know that there's, even if they were meaning to be ugly or even if they were wrong, like let's think through it and let's, so there's that. I was trying to think if there was another word that.
While you look for that, let me talk real quickly about the
the other word was just domineering. For an 8 was they just domineer, like which dominate. Yeah.
She mentioned the whole idea that there's 2 other numbers. Well, there's actually more than 2 other numbers.
Yeah, we don't get into that. I don't get into that.
Just so that you have an idea, if you were to draw out 9 numbers in the face of a clock, except that you start with. You start with the 9, or do you start with the 1? Yeah, you start with the 9 at the top.
Turn around so you can see it.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to do that. You start with the 9 at the top, like where 12 would be, and then.
Okay, here I'm gonna do this one first, so you can see on the Zoom call. That's what she's talking about. And then.
There you go.
It's kind of blurry.
Yeah, but they could get the idea.
Yeah.
You start with the 9 at the top, and then 4 and 5 are kind of on either side of what would normally be a 6. But you go all the way around and do the 9 numbers. A 9 goes to either a 3 or a 6. A 1 goes to either I have it written down.
Okay, so you said a 1 goes to a. Did you say?
I said a 9 goes
hang on
to a 3
one second.
and a 6.
Hang on one second. If you finish these,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then you just go through and give the main words and then do that.
Yeah.
Because there's some people that still don't know.
Yeah.
They
Okay,
still might
so-
not at least have an idea of kind of what they lean towards. So
Okay, so-
finish that. We
so
did this
9
or 9, yeah.
9 is peace, which is known as the peacemaker. Which they're great. My oldest brother is a 9, and he just wants everything to be at peace, and he's like, okay, well, again, kind of like in an 8, a healthy 8 perspective is like, well, let's see the different side. A 9 is the same way, but like very gentle and like, you know, okay, well, maybe let's see it this way. And let's see, maybe they definitely see the good in people. But the unhealthy side of a 9 is that sometimes that peacemaker is, they
get sucked into the stuff of others.
Because it's almost like they become ultra people pleasers. And like they get very quiet. They get very, not complacent.
If they're in the middle of a
just kind of
stressful situation or conflict, they won't necessarily be the one that speaks up and speaks out and speaks against wrong because they're trying to keep the peace.
So just as like certain like target words, this says they become spaced out, forgetful, stubborn, passive aggressive, and unassertive. And that is 100% my older brother. And I didn't know that until obviously reading this, and like there were times that he would like just not care and like
Or seem to.
yeah, and I was like, seriously, like what? And it was just because at that point there wasn't like, he wasn't in a healthy place like mentally. And you know, like obviously we know this now, and we know, he and I both know a good amount about the Enneagram, and so just that aspect of knowing that about him. And it's like when you know the negative sides of each number, and they're with people, I really, really, really encourage you to really just start with the people that you're closest with, and you have the closest relationship with, and that you have mutual respect in the relationships, because this can be very hard. Because I was talking to my mom the other day about some negative sides of a 2, and I know, and I knew if I did not say it right, and if I did not say it gently enough, it would crush her, because I knew when I heard it, I was like, there is no way that I'm talking about this.
I know.
And but I I try, because I know her heart, and I know that she is never trying to do anything but help or be loving. I knew, and I was listening to it, and I was just like, oh, that's my mom. Okay, so now how do I help her see this, but not as like a negative about herself, because that's where she's gonna go. And I can be the same way, and so I kind of just channeled my inner like sensitive side of like, if somebody was coming to me, and that's kind of how I've just tried to live my life, is like, if this was me, if someone was handling me, how would I want that to be done, and how would I want to be handled, and how would I want to be treated and loved, because this is hard. Like nobody, if you want criticism all the time, you might want to consider getting some help. I'm just saying, because it's just not normal. You shouldn't want that. And so knowing that these can help people and they can help you, but knowing that it's a delicate thing you're dealing with, and it's not just, well, this is what's wrong with you. You know, no, there's a reason for it, and there's a reason we are all the ways that we are. And before you say that with the other thing, these were just some like target words for, so there's like 3 groupings, and it's like where you think from, and it's like whether you, or where you act from, whether it's your head, your heart, or your gut. And so 5, 6, and 7. I don't know why I chose 5, 6, and 7. That was other than the fact that I'm a 5 and my brain went there. 5, 6, and 7 are thinkers. So we think with our thinkers. We're all thinkers. We think with our head. And we lead with our head, because we go to thinking, okay, what needs to happen. Our emotional struggle is anxiety. And I would have laughed at you and said, I don't deal with anxiety, until this pandemic happened. And I realized how much I have anxiety just in general. I'm out of screen there, sorry. But so in our desire, our deepest desire to have is security.
And that was
a 5, 6, and a 7.
Okay.
And then the gut thinkers are 1s, 9s, and 8s. And the emotional struggle is anger. And the deepest desire to have is justice. And it's different for each number. So anger looks different from a 1 to a 9 to an 8. And justice is going to be different. And then the heart.
We missed that one thing. I'm sorry. Just
Okay.
then, talking about that was the gut, the 1, 8, and 9.
Yes, the
Okay.
gut.
And then you made a comment right after that we missed. Sorry.
The emotional aspect, the biggest emotional struggle is anger. And then the deepest desire is to have justice.
And on head, the thinker was
The thinker was emotional struggle was anxiety. And the deepest desire was to have security.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so now the heart,
Triad.
yes, but it's
They're
the heart,
yeah.
driven
Thinkers.
from the heart,
Yeah.
are 2s, 3s, and 4s. Their biggest emotional struggle is shame, which actually comes from shame of feeling that they need something and feeling that they can't give the love because they're not in a place where they can give it. So it's that shame of not being the lover, I guess, in a sense. And their biggest desire is to have significance. So is to be significant, to be seen as significant. So those are just that's something I thought was interesting, just those target points.
So next up, one of the things that I want to do, there's some words that describe the authentic side of each of these numbers, which means that this is just where, if they're in a healthy place, this is where they go naturally. And then there's a word list that describes the adaptive side, and those are the places they might feel themselves get stuck if that's their core number. There's a lot of information here. I want to read down through just some of the words to describe each one. And then I'm just going to do it real quickly. And then you just know this, we're videotaping this. I'll put the link up. You can go back and watch it again if you missed stuff. We could spend hours or days talking about this. So, and we're going to start with 8s because you do the triads or the centers together. So we'll do 8, 9, and 1. The authentic side of an 8 is self-confident, strong, protective, and they use empathic leadership. So they're empathetic, and that's how they lead. The adaptive side of them, so this is kind of the negative side of them, is that they're aggressive, confrontational, domineering. Don't they sound lovely? Self-centered, self-righteous. So that's the 8s.
Mm-hmm.
Some of
No, that was just something. It's because that's a different verbiage. Than this, and this they just kind of do like unhealthy and healthy. Where I think it's like the authentic side is like when you're at your best. Because when you think of something as authentic, it's genuine and true and. And then when you think of something that's adaptive, it's not necessarily always a bad thing because it's like you're just adapting to a situation or whatever. But then there's the side of it, you're just adapting because you don't want to put in the effort. You don't want to. So that's it's just a different way of wording it.
So then there's some applications that you can use for each number. I'm not going to read through all of these either. And if we want to go into this further, you let me know. 8s need to learn how much force is necessary in any situation. Because they can tend to be domineering, like we said earlier. They need to learn to moderate their impact on others. They can't be the Holy Spirit in people's lives. And they need to learn to practice compassion. I'm going to skip that part.
And
Okay.
it's so funny because when that isn't your number, there's some of that you're just like, why would you struggle with that? Because again, it's just the difference.
Well, it's like the conversation Amy and I had on Saturday, where it was like, okay, we both feel for people. Amy feels for a different reason than I feel for people, but we both feel for people.
Like honestly, Mom's gonna put herself in someone else's shoes, and she's gonna sit on the sidewalk and cry with someone who she doesn't even know, because she's going to put herself in that, and that's where she's going to feel sorry for someone or sad for someone. And then there's the other side of like, I'm sorry. Not I'm sorry, but there's like, it's just
No.
like a different way
What we
of
were
like,
talking about the other day was that actually we both have some of the same tendency to feel sorry for someone, because hers tended to be more, how did you say that? It tended to be more,
I know, I don't remember.
but mine was more, it was more, we were talking about a specific situation, and she was sad for the person because, do you remember?
No, but yes, I remember, but I can't remember what the verbiage was.
Yeah, but I was sad for them because of what they had missed, and they didn't know that something was available to them.
Yeah.
it's almost like she feels the sorry from the emotional side, and Carol feels the emotion from the
situational side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the
Yeah.
not logical.
You're welcome.
But just
Yeah.
But it was interesting. Yeah.
Okay, and eights are, what was the word that describes the
Rigid.
eight?
Is that not?
That's the challenger.
The challenger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nines again are the peacemaker. Carrie had to go.
Oh, I was like, that was weird.
Yeah.
Weird, made like a honky.
Nines are adaptable, compassionate, easygoing, supportive. So again, that was Caleb. Patient, non-judgmental. They go with the flow.
And let me tell you, my brother,
Yeah.
he is so non-judgmental. I'll be
And
sitting there
drives her
and I'll
crazy.
say something, and he's like, well, and I'm like, oh, I'm like, no, they just hit them or whatever, you know. He's like, but
Yeah.
they might have had a good reason.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. At the adaptive side of a nine, they're indecisive. They stand out. No, what does that say? They're spaced out. Apathetic, undisciplined. They appear to be undisciplined, unassertive, and passive aggressive. So applications for a nine are like, they need to notice the places in their life that appear slothful or where they appear angry, and adjust. They need to pay attention to their own needs, because they don't on a normal basis. And they need to learn to set boundaries, limits, and priorities. Yeah. And there's more, but okay. Number one is the perfectionist. They are self-disciplined, hardworking, organized, discerning, noble, morally heroic. They expect everybody else to be that way. And one of the terms that I've found to be most interesting, and that's because there's ones and sixes that have similar things that happen. The one has a committee of one in their head that is constantly telling them what they did wrong and how they could improve the next time. And that's a miserable place to live. The ones on their adaptive side can be rigid, inflexible, controlling, overly serious, hypercritical of themselves and others, opinionated, and impatient. So an application for a one is to show compassion for themselves, because they don't. Regularly recognize the internal critical voice. So they have to recognize the fact that it's there so that they can adapt their thinking. And they need to allow time to relax, play, and accept themselves and others as they are. Twos are the helper. The authentic side of them is, this is Amy, warm, generous, empathic, enthusiastic.
I think that one's empathetic.
No, that one's
What is empathic?
empathic.
Oh yeah, sure is.
Enthusiastic, nurturing, measured helpfulness. They're supportive. And they embody divine love. Then we've got the adaptive side. Okay, this is what Ashlyn said could be hurtful if not spoken in love.
Can I just clarify with everyone that this happened in about a 4-hour period of time?
And I did not know that.
I can go upstairs and cry now, literally. But
And let me tell you, if you can envision someone, like, you have just thrown glass all over the floor, and they have said, okay, you have to walk as carefully as you can, and you have to finish this without a piece of glass in your foot. That's how carefully I was saying. Like, I'm telling you, and that's like hard, because my thing, I'll just blurt it out.
And I was trying to do that too.
Not out of like not caring because I care. I just blurt it out because it's already in my head and I've already thought it through. So it makes sense. Then I just spit it out.
And let me just say,
And so
neither
I
one
just-
did I feel was being, but I like literally, I just couldn't handle anymore. And I was just like, okay, I'm trying to swallow,
Which I
trying
knew,
to
so I
digest,
stopped. I
and
mean,
trying to, yeah.
I didn't go
So,
into.
anyway. But go ahead.
So the words are prideful, manipulative, clingy, indirect, possessive, preoccupied with approval, overly accommodating, and they overextend themselves.
Now, also, don't think that, because this is not airing her dirty laundry,
Right.
that she was,
Well,
you know,
it kind of feels like that.
in a bad, trust me, I can do mine.
We're getting
if you
to
would like.
5s and 6s in a
If you
minute.
would like to air mine, it will be in a moment.
I need a drink.
And so it's not because she was in a bad place. I obviously, because I spend so much time with her, I mean, I'm literally with her all the time, especially right now because we can't go anywhere.
Or when we do, it's together.
Yeah. And so, you know, you see like just how people are handling this whole just pandemic in a situation. And for me, it's been the anxiety, and it's been, I cry all the time.
Thank you,
And-
Michelle Ray. You and I need to be BFFs.
But, you know, she's kind of gone to the, okay, so not everybody's around. You know, like my brothers, they aren't around. My younger brother and his wife are around some, but then my older brother and his wife have stayed home.
But then Doug and Josh work together.
Right, my dad and my younger brother work together, so it's kind of like we're still living the same lives as each other, so we're still around each other. But so there's a point of like, you're lacking what you need. And my older brother and sister-in-law love my mom really well, so there's a point of like she's missing that.
Yeah.
And so there's this point of like because that's lacking, it's like, okay, now I gotta fill it. Now I gotta, you know. So there have been times.
It's called painting and completely reorganizing the upstairs of the house.
It's me. With me, I should say. So there's just a point of like when you realize why people act the way that they do, or are responding the way that they do. So this is, we were not saying that because she was in a bad place. I guess it just happened that we were talking.
We're literally discussing tonight.
Yeah.
That's how it came
And
up.
I had just finished the webinar,
Yeah.
so I guess it was just
That was a
timing.
double whammy.
Yeah.
So yes.
So as
Let's move
twos,
along.
they need to learn to receive because they're giving all the time. So they have to learn to receive things. They need to pay attention to their own personal needs because they don't. And they need to practice silence and solitude.
Who wants to be silent
Most
and
of
alone?
all, they need to learn to say, let's practice it together.
Oh no.
No.
Oh, I'm much better at that
Yeah,
than I used
yeah.
to.
They need to learn to say no. Type 3s, that's Doug. So those of you who know Doug, are the performers. They're
He's
authentic.
watching
He
us.
is watching.
He was,
Hi, Doug.
He might be going. He's like, I'm out of here
yeah.
now.
Their authentic sides are energetic, charming, optimistic, self-assured, competent, effective leaders, introspective.
And let me tell you, it's true because my dad is a fantastic
Yeah.
leader. Just watch him at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
It will blow your mind. I'm just saying.
Yep.
You're welcome, Dad.
The adaptive side of them, Jamie thinks she's a 2. That is very likely. 2s are overly competitive on the adaptive side, deceitful, superficial, they cut corners, they put on facades to impress, they're intense, self-conscious, moody, and guilt-ridden.
Now, I'm going to add, because my dad is a 3, and then someone else who's very close to me is a 3. And the deceptive part is actually towards themselves.
Yes.
They're deceptive on how they appear to people. So if they've maybe hurt your feelings, they're going to deceive themselves as if, well, it didn't hurt their feelings that bad because they didn't mean to.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of just saying, I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings, it's, well, I'm sure it didn't hurt that bad. So I'm just going to pretend like that it's okay. So it's more they deceive themselves rather than them being deceptive towards even us, that type of thing.
So the application for a 3, one of the applications for a 3 is they have to notice deceit and fear of failure. Because often the fear of failure is also a part of the the
Sure,
way they're deceiving
absolutely.
themselves.
Yeah.
They have to practice stillness and breathing, practice slowing down, and pay attention to their own needs. Imagine this. We have a couple of people who need to pay attention to their own needs. So that's the 3s. The 4s are the romantic. 4s on the authentic side are imaginative, sensitive, intuitive, artistic, compassionate, introspective, analytical, and they embody sacred creativity. The adaptive side of them is self-absorbed, hypersensitive, impractical, self-loathing, moody, depressed, envious, intense, and guilt-ridden. So for a 4, their application is to notice envy and
Our 4 just walked
in the door.
I'm not telling you that is. It's just funny. The look on her face when she's like,
For a 4, the application is to notice envy and excessive desire for what isn't, focus on what is positive in the present, be consistent in action despite fluctuating and intense feelings, and appreciate the ordinary.
That's good.
So, yeah. And then your 5s are the investigator. So now we're talking about Ashlyn. On the authentic side, they're objective, focused, calm, perceptive, ingenious, insightful, curious.
Well, that sounds pretty great.
Yeah. Systematic, experts.
Just kidding, it gets bad. It's fine.
And the adaptives are intellectually arrogant with
That was very timely, guys.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Terry Bass can't even handle it. She left. She left. She's like, I'm out of here, guys.
I'm out. They're withholding, they're controlled, cynical, negative, standoffish, stingy. They undervalue relationships on their weak side.
Yes,
Right,
Yeah.
sure.
And they're detached.
But the thing is, too, with undervaluing relationships, it's out of a protection, which
Yes.
I found, because 5s actually value relationships so much, and they're very, like, they love hard. And so in the weak spots, and especially because if you're a human being and you've lived, you've probably had someone hurt your feelings and break your trust. And so when you're in a weak spot, you say, well, this relationship's going to end, or this relationship's going to do this, or whatever. And so it's out of a protection for, in case it happens, which it probably isn't going to, but you create it in your mind.
So the application for a 5 is to practice silence and solitude.
I don't think that's quite fair. 'Cause I think that's
that
easy
just
for
comes
them.
naturally. Yeah.
It's bliss, you guys. It's like a dream.
Okay,
To
now
be silent.
they need to notice instances of keeping wisdom from others. Take a course to engage their body and emotions, and choose ways to engage with groups
Working
that can
out?
benefit from their loving wisdom.
They're saying I have to work out.
That's their body
says
and emotion.
Body and emotions. So
Can I do more?
yeah, I would guess.
I don't work out, guys.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So that's the 5. The 6 is the loyalist. That's me. Yeah, exactly. Let's read my mail. The authentic side of a 6 is that they're trustworthy, responsible, alert, insightful, loyal, compassionate, sympathetic to the underdog, collaborative, problem solving. And then the adaptive side is that they're hypervigilant. Our bad side is that they're hypervigilant, worrisome, indecisive, testy, self-defeating. They experience analysis paralysis. And I was explaining this to Amy the other day. We spend so much
Because
time.
obviously that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I'm like, explain to me what happens with that.
We spend so much time evaluating what the right answer is that we are paralyzed and don't do anything. Or it takes us a very long time to figure out what to do. We're paranoid and we're preoccupied with worst case scenarios. So while she's freaking out at the beginning because there's not a plan, I'm freaking out because I'm thinking of all the worst case scenarios.
Once it keeps going.
Yeah.
Because at first you're probably just like, okay, well, just like, it'll last maybe like a week or two.
These are the toilet paper hoarders, except that I didn't know to go get toilet
It's
paper.
because
So
Now, I do want to jump in real quick because I know we're we're a little over halfway through the numbers.
we're almost done.
Because we started at the end.
Oh,
We
that's
started
right.
at 8.
Well, yeah.
So what do we have?
We have 3 left.
Just 6 and 7.
We just did 6.
Oh,
We have
you're right.
7
Okay,
left.
sorry.
We're
But
just finishing 6.
If you're listening to them and you thought, oh, that sounds like me, and then you hear another number either before or after it, and you say, oh, that sounds like me too, there's a thing called a wing, and you kind of go back and forth between the two. So if you feel like you're relating to like the either number, because that tends to happen, you're probably, it's
The one
because
in the
that's
middle.
where
It's called a
you
wing,
kind of wing towards. I tend to wing towards a 6.
And I toward the wing toward a 5.
Yeah, and so because I'm just not creative, so that's not really like 4. There are parts of me that are, but I kind of have both, but I tend to lean that. So just in case you're thinking, wait, I have like 2 different. It's probably for that reason.
You got to win.
So honestly, one of the biggest issues with the 6, and I can say this because I are one, is trust. We don't trust.
Ooh, bless Tracy, because in his heart.
Yeah.
She is surrounded by
By
5s in her
fives.
life.
I'm
Yeah.
one of them. She told me.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
So an application for the 6s is that we need to notice fear and embrace trust. So you got to buck against what your natural tendency is. Accept insecurity as a part of life because we feel like we're insecure all the time. And we've got to recognize that flight or flight reactions are reactions to fear and develop new strategies to deal with that. And then hardest of all, we need to serve those that might bring them fear or anxiety. So that's the 6. 7.
It was a very hard boom on the table.
Nail in the coffin. 7 is the enthusiast. Their authentic side is optimistic, enthusiastic, spontaneous, idealistic. Does that say
I
curious?
think it's curious, yeah.
I can't read my own writing.
When you're
Curious.
trying to write fast,
Yeah.
it's
Generous and multi-talented. Y'all, this was a 50-minute session.
That's it. Mine was 3
It was
hours.
it was on videotape, and I literally wrote down almost every word she said, and I paused it, wrote down 2 or 3 things, and then went going again.
Yeah.
And it took me 2.5 hours to watch a 50-minute presentation because it was so full of good stuff. They uplift
we didn't
and
do that.
right.
Oh, okay.
They uplift and enliven others. They're imaginative, quick thinking.
Oh, you're still on top. Okay. Sorry.
And then on the adaptive side, they're self-centered, insensitive, narcissistic, self-indulgent, hyperactive, undisciplined, rebellious, inattentive, and struggles with completion of long-term commitments. Applications for a 7 are, yet they're the life of the party, so everybody loves them in spite of all that stuff. The applications for a 7 are that they notice self-indulgence. They need to realize that it's limiting to seek only what is positive. Make and fulfill commitments. Simply live in the present moment and learn to become more aware of others. So that's 7s. And that's all 7, or all 9.
Yeah.
So what's the practical application of that? I'm going to pick, I have a practical application that I've been very weighing exactly how to present. So I'm going to present it this way, and we're just going to do it. When I got this book, it was life-changing for me. I was in a point in my doTERRA career where I was really struggling with some relationships. So I got the book, found out what some of the numbers were, found out what my number was, and here's one of the things that I discovered. And I'm just going to use this as an example. As a 6, and I didn't finish this part, the 1s have a committee of 1 that's constantly telling them that they're wrong and they did the wrong thing. The 6s have a committee in their head that meets and thinks about what they did wrong and how they could do it differently, and lovely. So, one of the struggles that I was having was with a 1. I'm a 6, and one of the things that I discovered is that because a 1 is always right in their thinking, in their head, I got to the place where I discovered that I couldn't have an in-person or what's the better word? Not an in-person, I could have in-person conversations, but it was not best for me to have, let's say, a phone conversation with somebody if it was a highly intense situation, because the one's always right, and in their mind they think they're always right, whether they're right or wrong. And then the sixes just have a tendency not to, remember, the sixes are people that they over contemplate and they have that analysis paralysis. So I don't think quickly on my feet. You can back me into a corner really easily. So one of the things that I had to learn was that if I knew I was going into a situation with a 1, for example, I learned that I needed to do what I could do to not lengthen the conversation, was a better way to put that. To give myself time to respond so that I wasn't backed into a corner, but had the time to say what I authentically wanted to say, but I could take some of the bite out of it, because I can also tend to be very sharp with my words and too quick to say things. So that's one of the things that I learned just by the part in this book that talks about how the two interrelate. Because let me pull up a 6. And we're about to wrap this up, guys. So I know we've been talking for a long time. We can take some questions.
Finish it. I just have to.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the book has sidebars here where it will tell 6s and others. So for example, a 6 and a 1. When 6s are in relationship with a 1, their anxiety is often increased because they never feel good enough. This needs to be acknowledged and discussed. Otherwise, the 1 will feel like they are alone in trying to get things done. Not the case at all.
Interesting.
I'm just as motivated to get something done.
Yeah.
I'm just not quite as, Amy can tell, this is one of the reasons that the whole Wednesdays working together worked so well for us, because I need the affirmation of somebody else that, yeah, that would be a good way to go. Or we'll often bounce things off of each other and pare it down to where I think this would be the best means to do what you think would be a good idea.
Well, it's the way that the lady put it on Saturday was that she was talking about the differences between a 5 and a 1.
Mm-hmm.
And she was saying that 1s are going to come up with opinions and things that, well, sure, that sounds good from what I've seen, and that is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because that's what they've come up with. Mm-hmm. Where a 5, if a 5 presents you with information, it's because they've done the research and they're bringing it to you because they've gone through all of this and gotten facts. That doesn't mean that everything a 1 says is not facts. That's not what that means. It just means that with a 1, depending on the situation, I think probably too, you have to, you listen. You don't say, I don't know that you're right in that. You don't say that. You might just listen. Okay. And then when you part ways, you then do your own research. And so that was just something that's like with a 1, it's they present you with this information, which is then fact to them, but it is not necessarily fact.
Right.
So.
Right. And just as one other example, let me do the 6s and 2s, because this gives you a peek into how Amy and I best relate. The 6's goal will almost always be about safety, while the 2's goal will always be relational. So they'll need to agree to be honest about their differences. Additionally, 6's should be careful about doubting the 2's motivation for what they do and for others, with and for others. Meanwhile, the 2 needs to avoid focusing on the mistrust of 6's. It can be messy. So, for example, when it says about the 2's goal will always be relational, the 6's goal is about safety, Amy will often have the thoughts of how we can best relate to someone on our team, whereas I'm just trying to keep myself safe.
It's that fight or flight type
Yeah.
mentality for you, because that's where you go.
Right.
And you think worst case scenario.
Right.
She thinks not that she doesn't think about that. She thinks through those, but it's like, well, because a lot of times you can accomplish a lot just by having a relationship.
Yeah.
You really, truly can. And for somebody who has a little bit more trouble trusting, the thought of that is insane.
Yes. Why would I open myself up to that?
Why would you think that you can accomplish a lot with a true, genuine relationship when in reality, you can't?
Yeah.
because you build the relationship, you build the trust. Yes, your trust will be broken at some point. If it hasn't, it will be. And you then have to realize, okay, so how do I move forward from that? Yes, I've been hurt, but that was one instance. That's not my whole life. So how do I then implement what I learned from this specific situation so that A, if it does happen again, I would say it doesn't happen again, but it probably would. If it happens again, how do I then handle it?
Yeah.
Rather than go to fight or flight.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because just as a 6, my tendency would be to be backed into a corner. That's just the way. Because again, I wing to either a 3 or not a wing. I go to either a 3 or a 9.
Mm-hmm.
So look at the 9. If I'm in an unhealthy place,
you go to 9 in health or in growth.
In growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is peace.
Yeah.
So you're going to be more likely to, okay,
try and keep it,
you know, but when somebody maybe comes at you in that, you know, and it doesn't mean that you're wrong, or it doesn't mean that someone else is wrong, or it doesn't mean that you're right. It doesn't mean that they're right. It's just a matter of when everyone is functioning out of their brokenness and not necessarily at a place of healing, it gets messy.
Yeah.
And it gets ugly. And, you know, and so it's that goal for bettering yourself first and foremost, because once you better yourself, you have a brand new confidence that then translates into the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And you then, because you're confident in who you are, and ultimately wherever you stand spiritually, who God created you to be, you love people differently.
Yeah.
And you love yourself differently. You then love people differently because you see them differently.
Well, and again, ultimately, it's like all of the different things we talked about, the squiggles and the circles and the love languages and all of that is, again, loving those that you love better. Because, again, I think that's what we all ultimately want. And again, there are some of us who have walked through deep hurt and deep brokenness and relationships that have been fractured and all of that. And so, but it's like, okay, how can we do this? And how can we do this well? And love the people that we really do truly love the way that they need to feel. And for them to feel loved, because then again, we love them well, they're then maybe it spurs them on to love well and to learn.
Yeah.
What we're gonna say.
Well, this just says, it's like a couple different things from our thing on Saturday. But this one says, getting to know yourself is a journey. It's not a quick trip. And for me, and for a lot of people that know me, I mean, I'll talk about this openly because it is part of who I am and it has made me who I am today. At about 18, I'm now 24, almost 25. When I was 18, I kind of hit a wall of like, people don't seem to like me. I don't like people. I'm not happy. What can I do? And at 18, I really started changing. I focused on my relationship with God, and I made it, instead of it just being this thing I knew in my head from growing up in church, to this is how I'm going to live my life. 25 years later, no. Let's see. Almost 7 years later. Sorry, I'm not good with math. Almost 7 years later.
But she can do the research and figure out
yes,
what the
I
right
can.
answer
I
is.
just got on my fingers. God gave them to me. Thank you. I'm a completely different person than I was then. And the thing is, people actually like me and love me now, but I still have to learn to let them, because they didn't, and people did, but I was not somebody that walked into a room and they were like, Ashlyn. Well, that actually happens now. And it makes me very uncomfortable because I'm like, I want to run away. But I know that I'm just by being in the room, I'm bringing something to people. And so it's just, I mean, for me, it's been 7 years and I grow every single day, every single week, every single month, you know, from last year's birthday at 24 to this year's birthday at 25. in a month, you know, I'm a different person now. So it is a journey. And you know, if you feel like you're in a bad place, just take the next right step and make the next change, good, positive change for yourself.
Yeah.
And so, but this was just something that I thought about, because like people often think, well, what's the purpose of the Enneagram? Or why do I need to take another personality test? Or why do I need to, I just don't like them. This is called, they say it's your internal GPS, and it says it helps you to know why you think, feel, and behave in particular ways, so you can steer your internal life in the best direction for your type. And so it's just getting to know, and that was for me, it was just such a changing moment, because I was like, I'm not crazy. Something is not wrong with, well, I am crazy. Okay. I see those looks. I'm silly. But I'm not, something isn't wrong with me for feeling this way. And something isn't wrong with me because I don't jump at the opportunity to go to the store. Like, I thought something was wrong. Like, I was like,
So did
I was like, there's no way, because no one in my family is like, I mean, my older brother's kind of like that, but even my dad, like, he'd run to the store with my mom, and then Josh, he'd be like, yeah, sure, let's go to Target. And I'm like, why would you want to do that? You know? And so I thought something was wrong. And so the Enneagram really has been it's been an internal GPS, and it's taught me the best path to go on. Obviously for me, while using it in conjunction with, the Bible is my main guide in life, but just as like another practical tool of like, okay, this is how God created me. And back on to the topic of God, you know, I know that not everybody has the same life that I have chosen to live. And I, you know, would tell you why I think it's the best one, but not my life in particular, but with the Lord. This is just from it says biblical perspective. And it says, for people to see themselves with astonishing clarity so they can break free from self-condemnation, fear, and shame by knowing and experiencing the unconditional love, forgiveness, and freedom in Christ. And it just, because this test just tells you a lot more in depth about who you are as a person, and like why you function the way that you do, understanding and realizing that it's not all bad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the quirks that you have are not all bad. And they're not, as much as we probably have lived our lives feeling like they're bad, because nobody knows everybody the same, you know, like nobody knows how everybody functions exactly. But knowing that if you do have a relationship with God, knowing that there's a reason that he created you the way that you were created. And if you don't have a relationship with God, you know, it may not make as much sense to you. But the more conversation that you and I, or you and my mom, or you and Carol have, you may start to understand it a little bit more. But there's just, again, the thing that stuck out to me was the freedom in Christ, because without it, you feel bound, mm-hmm. and you feel confused and kind of hopeless, in a sense of like, well, I just am the way that I am, you know? And so that was something that really,
when we know in our knower that God is constantly at work in our lives, mm-hmm. it makes a huge difference and makes it easier to acknowledge the fact that we can change with his help.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, this has gone way longer than our trainings usually go.
Do you feel like you drank from a fire hydrant?
And there's lots more we could tell you and teach you, but we're willing to answer questions if you have questions or comments, or
and you feel free. Or completely, you go if you need to go.
Yep.
You know, I was also going to say that because there is so much more to this, and I know naturally, because it did the same thing for me, if you find yourself curious about more or deeper things, yes, you can Google it. You can find that.
Well,
But
and the test link that I gave you is actually a test on the McCord's page.
Okay.
So I'm sure they'll send you lots more information because you probably had to put your email address in to do the test.
I think sometimes too, it's you feel like if you have a relationship with somebody and you trust them, you feel like if you can ask them a question and you can trust where they got the knowledge from and the information from, that is more comfortable. So if like there are questions about that, and I obviously I just did this thing on Saturday, but I'm supposed to be getting an email with information.
You can ask me. Other than that, I
Should have sent it to me.
Yeah.
But I just, especially too, if you're wanting, not that Carol doesn't have the spiritual aspect, because she obviously does in that. I knew as soon as I said this without prefacing that, it's going to sound really bad. But that has been my like main focus.
Yeah.
Like the knowledge that I have is really truly like spiritually based and biblically based, because that's what I wanted. And I wanted to be able to, because the Lord is such an active part of my life, and that's where I know that my peace comes from, and I know that my strength comes from. I knew if I didn't, it wouldn't make sense to me.
Well, and one of the things that I love so much about the McCord's page, the Your Enneagram Coach Instagram, is that everything she teaches is in Christ, a 6 is. In unhealth, you might go this way, but in growth, you're going to go this way. So that was one of the things that I really appreciated too. All right, what you got for us?
They're all just like,
they're like, wait,
who's gonna
I'm
be
supposed
shy?
to ask a question.
Yeah, you don't have to. We just want to answer that if there are.
Unmuted.
Yes, ma'am.
Unmuted.
I don't know what I don't know. No, I think this will be great to learn more about this as I build my own team with Mary Kay, because just dealing with, just knowing the different types of even personalities and how they.
For example, Beth, if you walk into a situation, I don't know exactly how you do this ahead of time, but if you walk into a situation and know that you're dealing with a 1 or a 6, you know that they're already criticizing themselves and their appearance.
oh,
So you can be, I think she froze.
I think so too.
Or we
or
froze.
she's intently staring at you.
You froze. I'm like, she's pointing her finger at me. I have no idea what she's saying.
No, what I was saying was that as you're, if there's some way you can find out ahead of time, if you know that you're looking at a 1 or a 6, they've got either a party of 1 or a committee that's already criticizing the way they look. So you can pour into them, just helping them to understand that they are a thing of beauty just because the Lord made them.
Well, and I think too, because I
she
know.
froze again.
Well, she froze again.
Is she?
Well, yeah.
I
That
think
means
so.
we're frozen too for her.
I
Let's
know.
just stare at her
Yeah.
and think she
You
unfreezes.
froze again.
Oh, hang on. You back, Beth?
I'm here. You guys froze.
She's like,
I keep moving.
But because obviously Beth is my aunt, my mom's oldest sister, second sister.
She's the sister under
Yes,
me.
she's
Yes,
the oldest, and that's what I'm trying to say. But knowing you, like you naturally, that's why I think you probably lean towards the 9, because you naturally see that good in people, and you naturally encourage them, and you naturally like kind of not adapt to them like in a bad way, like you don't like go chameleon on everybody, but you know, like you see that in people. And so like, you know, this is such a great tool for you to have too, like just even as like a topic to talk about, and just say like, you know, have you done this? This is so interesting. If you feel even like somebody's maybe like beaten down on themselves and being like, and you just be like, hey, this is actually something really interesting that I saw, and it just kind of gives like a different perspective. I just think that you could use this especially as just kind of that type of tool, and you're working on their outward beauty, because that is important, and like that makes you feel confident. But then with this tool, you can then go the extra step into the inward beauty, and it all ties together. I think that'd be so cool.
It absolutely does, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Terry, did any of this, like, could you kind of figure out maybe what number you thought you were? Did it, like, with all the stuff we talked about?
Yeah, I want to be a blend.
Yeah.
But I do see a lot of 1s and 5s and 6s, and that's why I said a blend, and a little bit of 9 and sprinkled in there, because I do like people to get along. I don't, I'm not, I might have opinions, but I'm not going to push them on anybody.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
like, that's my opinion.
So I
You
have,
can do whatever you want. I really am okay with that.
Right.
yeah, because you just said that, it made me think about the thing on, that I did on Saturday, and she was talking about like the core fears.
Mhm.
And so like you said about that you see some one. So those fears are being bad, evil, corruptible, and wrong. Yes.
Okay.
I was like,
Yeah.
that doesn't seem to fit you.
Okay.
So the 2's core fears are being unloved, worthless, needy, unwanted.
That's not going to be me.
Okay.
Then a 6 is being without support. Or wait, you said 5, not 6,
Yeah,
right?
she said 5.
5 and 6 both.
Oh, you said both. Okay, so the 6 being without support, guidance, security, and being blamed or abandoned.
That's not you. A little bit.
Okay, so 5 is being ignorant. No, annihilated. Annihilated, invaded, obligated, and incapable. And then the 9 is being in conflict, loveless, separate, overlooked, shut out, or in discord with others.
That's not you either. I don't. None of them.
She's not anything.
None of
Terry's
them.
got it made. What's going on?
I know.
Terry has arrived.
Let's just do the good parts.
I was just focusing on the good. That's kind of what I do. So that might help explain some of it. I do, though. I'm always looking for the good in things. And if you do have a negative thing, I am going to be the last one to give up and trying to find that little good in there somewhere. Kind of like I know there's a pony in there somewhere. And I just, it might take a while, but
Yeah,
I am going to
taking the
find the good.
Yeah. That's why, again, and the reason that the test is so long is because they do things, and the strength finders is the same way, where they ask the same question like 12 different ways on purpose, so that, because sometimes worded one way, our quick response is this, but the next 6 times we answer it a different way. Well, that's actually more our truth in that scenario.
And
So,
one of the hardest things about taking any kind of a test like this is that we have a tendency, and that's why they tell you to go with your first answer. We have a tendency to look at things from the way we want people to see us instead of the way we actually are in our heart of hearts. And Amy and Ashlyn for the longest time thought I was a completely different number than I actually am. In large part, I think because as a 6, again, I have that committee, so I'm trying to meet up to other people's expectations of me instead of being who I genuinely am. And that can make a huge difference.
so again,
Which way,
process.
which way do you answer it? Like how you feel in your heart, or how the image that you put out there?
How you feel in your heart, because that's who you truly are.
Because nobody's watching you when you're taking the test.
Yep.
Which is great. Yes, revealing your number kind of reveals a lot about you, but we're all doing it. You're not alone. So you just take the test, you answer the questions truly off of who you are when you're in your room alone, or you're in your car, or you're in the shower, because that's where the best thinking is done, and you won't change my mind about that. But, who you are in those moments, answer it that way.
Well, and Terry, we have, Ashlyn's 24, almost 25. The rest of us on here have lived twice as much life as her. So we've had way longer kind of to almost, not to deceive, but you just kind of
to create your mask.
Yeah, to create a mask and to adapt. And so there are points where and that's why I said what about the strength finders, for me to go back and take that again, especially in regards to leadership and business, because how I answered those questions 3 years ago
isn't the person that I know that I've discovered that I am now. And so I'm interested to kind of revisit that and go, and again, harmony and empathy are going to be at the top of mind because that is who I am. But I'm interested to see some of the other because I actually have some strengths that I didn't even realize I had until I realize now that every time I say, hey, I've been thinking, and all the people in my life go, oh, because that means I'm getting ready to
Tell us she wants to repaint a room.
yes, rearrange the house, or to Carol.
Or she has some really great idea of something to do with doTERRA. She doesn't know how to make it work, but that's my job.
It just means her thinking means more work for the rest.
Exactly.
But I didn't realize that. And if you would have said that to me, I would have been like, oh, no, I'm not at all futuristic, or it might be kind of visionary. I don't know what the technical, because I would have been, oh, no, that's not me, that's not me. But some of that comes because of things that had been said to me and said, you don't deserve this, or this isn't you, or you're not a good fill-in, whatever. And so you do, and for certain personalities, strengths, whatever, that hits differently than for others.
I was gonna say, like, for me, I'd be like, well, that was rude. and,
You know,
and just be like, you're rude and you need to work on that.
Yeah.
And then for mom, she's gonna be like,
Curl up in the corner and cry.
I am that.
Yeah.
What they just said that I am,
Yeah.
I am that. You know, and so there's just a difference in.
And again, having somebody in your life that knows you and can speak into that is super helpful too, you know, to where you're like, okay, is this, you know what I mean? And you just partner. And that's another thing too. I just think God put us on this journey together, you know, and the whole concept of no man is an island, and then we are in this together. And that's why I say on Team Holtz, let's link arms and go, because that's what we're here for. We're here for community. We're here for connection. You know, we're here for education. That's what we're here for. So yeah, so I just think it's interesting. Tracy on Facebook said one of the studies that she took on the Enneagram said that the 9 was like Julia Roberts on Runaway Bride. So those of you have seen Runaway Bride. So I think that's funny. And my mother-in-law just said the older one is there at our more life experiences. The older one is, there are more life experiences. So absolutely. And again,
And they can sway.
you have all those layers of the onion too that can kind of come into.
But, and that's something that
Yeah.
I've learned too. Like so many people have said this to me. I almost called out one person, but she's not the only person that said it to me. People have said to me, because a lot of people have seen the changes that I've made in the last 7 years, and they've said, you have taken these tools early on in your life to change.
Mm-hmm.
For people who have lived more life, you have more things to work through.
Right.
Not
Absolutely.
that, like somebody was talking about their counselor saying that, you know, when you take care of something, you take out the bottom level. You don't have to go to each floor and deal with all of it, because that's scary.
Yeah.
To think, well, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to go through that again. Well, you don't have to necessarily, because you can take out that bottom floor. And what happens when you take out the bottom floor? The whole building just goes. So unless you do it really fast, then it all sits. But we're just gonna go with it all goes. And so, you know, so it's like the more life you've lived, the scarier it is to think, oh, I have a lot to work with.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot to deal with. And, you know, just because you've lived more life doesn't mean it's any more scary than it was for me. Because that's my life, you know. And so,
well, and it's like we even talk about as far as our journey, our doTERRA journey with oils, supplements, all the things that we're doing. For those that are younger and kind of start this process early, you know, able to see a naturopath, do the things that we do, they're so far ahead of where maybe some of us are, where we've had years and years of this, and now we're going, okay, we need to make some changes, whether that's physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is, but it's still possible, you know, and the tools are the same for all of us. So yeah. So good. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that we were able to do this. I think this was fun. And you know, we could talk for
Absolutely.
ever. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Terry, when you're done, when you and Fran are done with your test, I would love to know because it will likely pull up 2 or 3. And then you just kind of have to figure out.
13 numbers.
Yeah. It'll tell you. It won't, because they're actually, because of the way that they do this test, they're very careful to not, in a sense, like label you. Like, so they won't say, like, they wouldn't have said to me, well, you're a 5. Even though I fit every single thing, everything that's out, well, most everything. There are a few things I'm like, that doesn't really feel like me. But most everything that is about a 5 is me. So it would be easy for them to be like, oh yeah, you are like the perfect example for a 5. They won't do that. So they will say, you are most likely whatever number, and then it will say with this number following or something like that. So there will be like your closer.
Because Mom,
numbers.
you said that you had the 2 numbers that were pretty close, right?
She
and then
said
a third,
2
right?
and 6.
2 and 9.
Oh, 2 and 9.
A 2 and a 9, yeah, and then with you. So that's how it kind of, and then again,
Which is interesting because you're a 2 and Beth's a 9.
We think that's I really think that is a 9 because of just the way. Oh, she's gonna say something. I think.
Yes, I am getting ready to say something because I cleared my throat. I think when I think of a peacemaker, I don't necessarily think of somebody who's always like, oh, I don't want to say anything. I think more of that as a peacekeeper.
Yeah.
Like a peacemaker, if you think about it, the military, they consider themselves peacemakers.
Yeah.
And they're definitely not like, hey, let's all sing Kumbaya. Let's all, they're definitely standing up and saying, stop, you say your part, and then, come to an agreement, to come to that compromise.
And that's why
I think I tend to be that way.
What?
Say that again?
No, that's why I think that about you, because you're very, you've always been very calming and but you're also not, like a pushover in a sense, like you have that calming spirit and just like personality, but like, you're not gonna say, well, I don't really agree with you, but because I don't really want to.
You would just silently disagree with them.
I would say, that's dumb.
I'm just going to go along with it, even if I do get arrested. Like, you're not.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, yeah, I don't really know that that's the best idea. And let's do that. So it's just a difference in a peacemaker and a peacemaker.
I'm not always calm, though. Let's be honest. I'm not always calm.
Yeah.
Mom's like, no.
Cherry Swafford, who was on here a little bit ago, and then she was on.
Yeah.
She's got littles, and there's a time difference, and so she was she had introduced the thought to me that there's a difference between a peacemaker and a peacekeeper, and one is actually a warrior and fights. And so it just, that whole concept, I was like, oh, and it's been an interesting thought process for me too. So again, you just kind of learn different things and kind of processing it and thinking through it. I think it's interesting to see. But again, it's just helping us all to be better in who God created us to be and the strengths that we have, and understanding other people's strengths and maybe even weaknesses so that we can partner better. So
okay, ladies, Thursday night, I think we're going to go with a BOGO recap
for the
evening.
BOGOs this week.
Yeah.
By then
we'll know. We will likely know. We may know everything by then, because they've said that they will, toward the end of the week, go ahead and kind of give us an overview of this is what's happening the rest of the week, because technically a lot of people should have had their boxes shipped at some point today. So there may be some people that have them by Wednesday or Thursday. So they're going to go ahead and let us know what the rest of the stuff is. Even if they don't do that, the only thing by Thursday night we won't know is the last BOGO or 2.
Well,
or
the last
freebies
ones are.
Yeah, 1 or 2.
But we'll do that.
But we can go ahead and do
just for in case you
10 of
wonder
the 12
what we're looking at.
Yeah, there's a sideshow over here.
Is at the moment he has a butternut squash up to his ear like it's a telephone.
Yeah.
So that here he comes. He's gonna come in.
The class clown.
This is what.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
And he was standing across from us eating some cake a minute ago.
Yes.
So that's what we're trying to concentrate. But
Yeah.
the
the comedian over here. And his wife is in there. She goes, sorry. Like she has to apologize to me. I'm
Exactly.
like, I should be apologizing to her.
Yeah.
So
I do have to say though, Tara the cow has been intently learning as you have been teaching.
we need to find out what her number is.
Exactly.
Qualified investigator, researcher.
I had to take a picture. I was like, oh my word, that's so funny because she's like this.
Like, perfect. At Christmas time, Carol has a red Santa hat on her. That's,
Nice.
so.
The people on Facebook can't fully see, so there you go.
Oh yeah. You can see
I'll
her.
send you the picture I took.
Here. Yeah, so Ashlyn took one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the picture.
Oh, hang on.
Tara the
There we
cow.
go.
So
There we
that's
go.
over her shoulder. Yeah. So, anyway, good to see you all.
Yep.
And again, like Kara said, we'll be back on Thursday night. Next Monday night, we try to give you a couple ahead of time. Monday is startup of leadership stuff again, and they're doing doTERRA for Men is next Monday, and it's in the evening. Yeah. So what we will probably do is jump on again at 6:30, but only be on from 6:30 to 7, and probably just kind of doing a check-in with everybody. How's everybody doing? Yeah. And all that, and then we'll jump off because we are going to watch the doTERRA for Men stuff, and then Doug and I are going to recap that on Friday evening. So we'll put that out here more. But for those of you who you have hubbies or the guys in your life, and you just think that might be something, especially hearing, because again, we're a bunch of women on here, but hearing from a guy who partners well with me in this journey, and just kind of talking about some of that stuff. So that's the plan. But don't come if you don't have a guy. I mean, don't not come if you don't have a guy. Come anyway.
Because it will be helpful for you.
Yeah.
In learning how best to relate to the guys that might be coming to you for advice and
on
counsel.
the teams. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all. Hope you have a good evening. I got to go work on graphics for tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.